The last few years have been tough. Now we all want to get moving again. But if you just keep your head down and fight your way through immediate barriers, you'll miss the bigger picture. Take a look around you, and you'll see that companies all over the country have come out of the crisis at a new pace. They're looking further ahead. They're moving faster, taking bigger strides and making bigger gains. It's all happening right now, and it's time to choose. Are you in? Because a brand new economy is being built. A green economy. Which means you don't just meet your obligations, you adapt to unlock new opportunities. Where digital innovation's twice as fast as what came before. And the world of work is changing rapidly beyond all recognition. So step up to a new level. It's the way to grow. And the way to make the UK the most competitive and future-focused country in the world. Join the leading pack. Seize the moment.
Welcome back to day 3 of the CBI annual conference. We've got plenty of discussion and debate coming up this morning from McLaren in Woking and Swansea, where we'll be heading next. But I do want to say, please do get involved and submit your questions for the panellists via the chat function on Swapcard. But now let's head over to the Great Hall in Swansea and hear from Lord Karan Bilimoria.
Thank you very much, Karan. It's wonderful to be in Wales, to be in Swansea, and to be at Swansea University. And many thanks to the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Paul Boyle, and your team for hosting us over here. Thank you to Ian Price, our wonderful regional director here in Wales. Thank you to Catherine Roberts, our wonderful chair of our council in Wales, and all our council members. And a big thanks to to Dave and the CBI team for everything you've done to put on this fabulous day. Thank you for all of you, not only being in this hall, the Great Hall of Swansea University, but also those tuning in from all around the country and around the world. Just think back to where we were exactly 2 years ago. Just think back. A general election was underway, Brexit still not done, the onset of a global pandemic not even known. And just think where we were a year ago. I always think the best way to predict the future is to look to the past. We were in our second lockdown a year ago, having started our first on the 23rd of March 2020 with huge uncertainty and ambiguity. We were days away from the first COVID-19 vaccine being granted regulatory approval in the UK. There was hope. There was a light at the end of that tunnel. We have been through hell. And as Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going. And we did. We kept going. And I'm so delighted to be here in person, all of us, on the final day of the CBI's first ever UK annual conference. 3 days, 6 locations, 25 sessions, 67 speakers. And we have a packed schedule today, broadcasting from Wales to Woking to London. And shortly we'll be holding a panel on making the UK a global trading powerhouse. But first, I would like to thank the CBI's strategic partners, Accenture and Hayes, alongside our corporate partners, Advanced, Lloyds Bank Group, National Grid, Ricoh, Salesforce, and Vodafone Business for making this conference possible. Thank you to all our sponsors. I'd also like to thank CS Connected and Swansea University once again for hosting us over here. CS Connected, the first compound semiconductor cluster. A group of manufacturing innovation leaders who show the strength of great regions like South Wales in future-focused industries like advanced manufacturing. And Swansea University, that is world-renowned for its research, has more than 500 research partnerships with businesses across the UK. And that, like the University of Birmingham, where I'm proud to be Chancellor, I've been Chancellor there for 7 years, we speak to our country being a world-leading, competitive and innovative economy. Our universities are the best in the world, along with America. So today I'm going to talk about how we can draw on the lessons of the last 12 months and our work together, the CBI and its members, academia, business, government, all working together to achieve these ambitions, to build a stronger, more sustainable, more successful future across all parts of the UK, building a truly global Britain. Well, in my view, 2021 is a watershed year where the UK has been at the center of the global stage, right at the heart of it. In May, I had the privilege as CBI president to chair the B7 summit ahead of the UK hosting the G7 in June. And I remember so clearly the chief economist of the IMF, Dr. Geeta Gopinath, saying that a country like the UK, which would need to borrow £400 billion due to the economic impact of the COVID pandemic, to save businesses, save jobs, one of the countries with the highest levels of government support, whether you look at it in absolute terms, whether you look at it in per capita terms, combined with our world-leading vaccination program, we as a country, she predicted, would bounce back and have a strong recovery post-pandemic. But what's actually happened in the intervening 6 months since May? Labor shortages, energy crisis, queues at the petrol stations, global supply challenges, the supply chain challenges, pandemic completely avoidable, and rising inflation hitting 4.2% just now. The government has formed the Supply Chain Advisory Group chaired by the former Tesco boss, Sir David Lewis, and a task force for reopening the hospitality sector. And the CBI and our members are working closely with both of these initiatives. The CBI is also constantly, every day, putting forward solutions right into the heart of government to deliver actions that make a real difference to our members. But we believe much more is needed. That is why the CBI has called for a COBRA for recovery to bring business and government together, to find rapid, substantive and pragmatic solutions to these issues. Because we know that government and business working together is so very powerful. Just look at when the Prime Minister appointed Kate Bingham, now Dame Kate Bingham, who I have the privilege of knowing, from the private sector, and empowered her to run the vaccine task force in May 2020. May 2020. Working with the backing of government, the task force ordered 6 vaccines, including the first 2 to be approved, the Pfizer-BioNTech and the Oxford-AstraZeneca, with the first vaccination actually administered less than 7 months after her appointment on the 8th of December, V-Day 2020. Just imagine how amazing that was. There was no certainty of a vaccine. In fact, the shortest time a vaccine had ever been developed before was 4 years. In August last year, I started calling on the government for the rollout of mass lateral flow tests. And from earlier this year onwards, lateral flow tests have been available free of charge to every business, to every citizen in this country. Survey after survey has shown that these tests are very effective. I'm so grateful to the government for listening. And since this January, the CBI and I have been calling for the government to put as much focus and urgency and effort into finding repurposed treatments to prevent hospitalizations and deaths from COVID. And particularly since Sajid Javid has taken over as Secretary of State for Health, we have seen excellent progress. Today, one day, every day, one after another, treatments are being announced. One of the options coming through the regulatory approval process is the Pfizer oral antiviral candidate, with interim analysis showing an 89% reduction in the risk of COVID-19 related hospitalizations or deaths compared to a placebo. Isn't that remarkable? I mean, I think that's a game changer. So to me, I'm very confident that with the combination of vaccines, mass testing, the lateral flow tests, treatments like the Pfizer one I've just spoken about, we can now hopefully avoid any further lockdowns as we learn to live with the virus. And I'm proud to say that the CBI and business also led the way internationally when there was the tragic COVID outbreak in India, the country of my birth, in April and May this year. We mobilized to donate critical supplies from oxygen concentrators and oxygen cylinders to medicines and more. The generosity and the willingness to help was immediate and substantial, including working with the Prince of Wales's charity, the British Asian Trust. And I'm so grateful to everyone who just rallied unhesitatingly to help. I'm so grateful to you. Over the last 2 years, business has stepped up to the service of the nation to tackle some of the greatest challenges of our time. But the question now is, how do we get past those challenges? How do we unlock our potential and become a truly global Britain? And I think really starts with being collaborative, something we must do not only regionally, as Tony Danker, our Director General, outlined on Monday, but also internationally, to build up the strength of our vital regional economic clusters. We already have a strong story to tell when it comes to clusters. And one of the best examples of the power of collaboration at home is the Cambridge cluster, built around a truly world-beating university that has more Nobel Prizes than any other in the world. It's not an American university, it's Cambridge University that has more Nobel Prizes than any other university in the world. It began as a tech cluster around Acorn Computers and Sinclair Research, and now it's home not just to leading tech companies like Arm that was founded in Cambridge, but also a thriving life sciences cluster. So today, when we talk with pride of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, well, where are AstraZeneca, the British-Swedish company's world headquarters? They're in Cambridge. And just yesterday, AstraZeneca opened its £1 billion new global research and development facility to be located in Cambridge, inaugurated by His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. A powerful demonstration of what collaboration between universities and business can achieve in our economic clusters around the country. And there are many, many more examples. I'll give you another example. A few years ago, the University of Birmingham's Centre for Railway Research and Education, under the leadership of the world-renowned Professor Clive Roberts, was given the Queen's Anniversary Prize for Higher Education. And I remember so clearly at the ceremony in Buckingham Palace, I told His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales that we were developing technology that would one day make the Royal Train hydrogen-powered. We all laughed. Well, fast forward to COP26 this month in Glasgow. Not only had the University of Birmingham developed the Hydroflex, the world's first retrofitted hydrogen-powered train, we had Prince Charles on that train, we had the Prime Minister Boris Johnson on that train, and I had the privilege of chairing a meeting of international transport experts on board that train. Look at that. I mean, a phenomenal, remarkable achievement that could only have come about because of collaboration. Collaboration between the University of Birmingham, the government's Innovate UK, rolling stock company Porterbrook, as well as nearly 30 other businesses. Another example, I'll give you another example. At COP26, I spent 1.5 weeks there out of the 2 weeks. I spoke on a panel about Hull, the city of Hull. And on that panel, we had the leader of the city's council, we had the chancellor of the University of Hull, we had a UK managing partner of EY, the only Big Four firm in the city. We had the chief executive of Reckitt, one of the world's largest companies whose origins are in Hull and who are now investing £200 million in that region. And I was there as President of CBI. And there you are on that panel, showing the power of business, government, universities, working together to develop our vital region. So we've now got to build on this. And that is why, speaking alongside the Prime Minister on Monday, Tony Danker, our Director General, announced the launch of the CBI Centre for Thriving Regions to expand and replicate some of our most successful regional clusters, the sort of examples that I've spoken to you about just now. And we've launched also a universities and business task force, because we have several university members at the CBI bringing together and focusing our businesses and university members on clusters, on regional development, on R&D and innovation. Collaboration, of course, can be global. The last 2 years have been a defining moment of the UK's role on the global stage. And of course now, this year we've had B7, which I spoke about, we've had the G7, which we hosted, we've had COP26, which we've hosted. And in the 1.5 weeks that I spent in Glasgow for that transformational event, for the first time ever, business was present in force, on force, in a huge way at COP. Usually it was government and NGOs, this time it was government and NGOs, but business had a huge presence, the most ever in COP's history. And there's now a genuine belief in the challenge of climate change. CBI has teamed up with Deloitte on an excellent initiative called the Goal 13 platform. And we published the latest impact report of this Goal 13 platform in October, deliberately just before COP26. Phenomenal insights, but here are two stats that stood out for me. 79% of businesses believe that climate is a megatrend. 89% of businesses have at least one climate-related target. What gets measured gets done. And at a B20 event at COP26, which I spoke at, it was noted that while 1 megawatt of coal creates one job, 1 megawatt of solar creates 7.4 jobs. So this is jobs, jobs, jobs. And business is making serious commitments. I'm proud to say that 60% of the FTSE 100, with a market cap of £1.2 trillion, have already committed to net zero by 2050. And business is also walking the talk. At the beginning of this year, I got a call from Steve Varley, the head of sustainability for EY globally, telling me, Karan, we at EY are going to go we're going to go carbon negative in 2021. I said, what? We're in the middle of a pandemic. You know what? They achieved that by October. Business walking the talk. And I had the privilege of chairing the CBI's Heat Commission last year, which fed many important recommendations. When Kwasi Kwarteng was the energy minister, he's now Secretary of State for Business, we fed those recommendations into Department of Business, and the government has listened to a lot of it in the government's new heat strategy. A third of carbon emissions, greenhouse gases, come from heat, and half of that comes from buildings. And of the 29 million houses in the UK, only 1 million are up to the standard. 28 million need to be upgraded. So this calls for new technology, from hydrogen pumps, from heat pumps to district heating. And to me, the most important of all is hydrogen heating. And do you know, we're already, as a company I met in Scotland, I shared the platform with, already implementing hydrogen heating to homes in the country. That is happening as we speak. It is a reality. And this will also create 200,000 new jobs. And as the Prime Minister said when he addressed us at the B7 in May, the race to net zero is not a zero-sum game. You can cut reliance on coal now and grow your economy and create skilled jobs. Here's a fact. From 1990 to 2019, 1990 is when I founded Cobra Beer, so that's an important year. The UK, in that period, in these 3 decades, has cut its carbon emissions, including international aviation and shipping, by 41% in these 3 decades. And wait for this. At the same time, the economy grew by 78%. So the UK has already shown its leadership in offshore wind power. And there was also Boris Johnson's announcement at the start of our annual conference in the Port of Tyne on Monday of the creation of up to 145,000 more electric vehicle charging points. This is wonderful. Exactly the kind of detail we need to seize the opportunities of the green industrial revolution. And the Prime Minister is spot on with his 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution. There's so much more we can do. For example, with the potential of small modular nuclear reactors like those being developed by our member Rolls-Royce. And when it comes to the circular economy, I can think of no better example than my own business manufacturing beer. The waste malt from the brewing process is used for cattle feed. The waste yeast from the fermentation process is used to make Marmite. And we use as little water as possible, and the wastewater is treated to be reused. And even carbon dioxide is captured and reused. So I could go on. We're also very conscious of the need to collaborate to protect biodiversity. And the Dasgupta Review, led by Cambridge University's Professor Sir Partha Dasgupta, is wonderful. It described nature as our most precious asset. It showed that 1 million animal and plant species are believed to be threatened with extinction. So working together, we can prevent this. And as Sir David Attenborough, our national treasure, said about the Dasgupta report, he said, this immensely important report shows us how, by bringing economics and ecology face to face, we can help save the natural world, and in doing so, save ourselves. Well, Swansea's own son, Dylan Thomas, he wrote, I quote him, Youth calls to age across the tired years. What have you found, he cries. What have you sought? Well, survey after survey shows that two things matter more to young people than other things today. And those two things are climate change, sustainability, biodiversity, and the environment. Really matters to them. And the second thing that really matters to them is diversity and inclusion. And I'm proud to be the first ethnic minority president of the CBI in its history. And I'm proud to have launched Change the Race Ratio, an initiative which champions increasing ethnic minority participation across all business. Many, many leading businesses around the country have already joined up and signed up to change the race ratio. And I urge all of you watching this, all of you here, sign up to change the race ratio. Because we know that this pandemic has highlighted and in many cases exacerbated long-standing inequalities, both nationally and globally, like never before. And as Dr. Ngozi, a hugely impressive new Director General of the World Trade Organization, the WTO, when she spoke to us at the B7 in May, she pointed out a statistic that I will never forget. The whole continent of Africa has almost 18% of the world's population and only 0.15% of the world's vaccine manufacturing capacity. So here the UK has stepped up with its involvement in the UN-backed COVAX initiative to roll out COVID vaccines in developing countries across the globe. And I think this country of ours, the UK, is the most amazing country. I think we need to use our strengths to not only collaborate at home, but to collaborate abroad, but also to compete on the global stage. We are 1% of the world's population, and we produce 14% of the most highly cited research papers. We're 1% of the world's population, and we're the second largest services exporter in the world. We're 1% of the world's population, and yet we remain one of the top destinations for inward investment in the world. And we're 1% of the world's population, and we have the best universities in the world, along with the United States of America. We're 1% of the world's population, and one of the most entrepreneurial countries in the world. And as an entrepreneur, I'm so proud of that. An example of that is that the UK is home to the third highest number of tech unicorns in the world. We can't be complacent. The UK's Global Investment Summit and COP26 highlighted that as we emerge from the pandemic, there is a wall of investment waiting to be deployed to spark sustainable growth. Mark Carney spoke about that $130 trillion waiting to be deployed. So now our challenge is to create a business environment that will attract and unleash that investment, unlock that investment. Because if we don't, our competitors will. And the recent budget saw some small steps in the right direction. For example, the modernization of the R&D tax reliefs to include data and cloud computing costs. The super deduction is fantastic. That's just the type of thing and the move that the UK should be making to incentivize investment. But there are big areas where we must improve to attract that vital investment. When it comes to R&D and innovation, we as a country highly underinvest. We invest 1.7% of GDP on R&D and innovation. You compare that with Germany, 3.2% of GDP. You compare that with the United States, 3.1%. Just imagine if we spent 1% more on R&D and innovation a year, that's an extra £20 billion a year. That would just power ahead our already powerful capabilities in this area. The government says they want a high wage, high growth, high productivity, high investment economy. Well, I agree 100%. Business agrees 100%. But right now, we're facing a high tax economy. This includes the planned corporation tax rises from 19% to 25%, an increase in national insurance by 2.5 percentage points, 1.25% for employers, 1.25% for employees. And all the while, business rates need fundamental reform. The burden of property taxes in the UK is 4 times higher than Germany, 3 times higher than the OECD average, higher than any other G7 country. So together, all this adds up to the UK having the highest tax burden in 70 years. Higher taxes threaten to stifle our recovery. What we need is to stop hiking taxes and focus on boosting investment, because that's what's going to lead to growth. That growth is going to lead to jobs. That jobs is going to lead to the tax take. That tax take is going to be leading to the debt being paid down. Because right now, government spending is set to reach the highest level since the 1970s, and debt as a percentage of GDP is almost at 100%. Back at the Second World War, at the end of the Second World War, debt as a percent of GDP hit 250%, and it took until 1962 to get that down from 250% to 100%. And yet, even during that time, the Second World War, during the toughest, bleakest times of the war, in 1942, the government commissioned the Beveridge Report. We're working towards achieving a better tomorrow. 3 years into the war, with no clear end in sight, nobody knew then that it was going to last another 3 years. In the midst of the crisis, the government commissioned the Beveridge Report, laying the foundations for the welfare state and the NHS, which transformed our country's future. And that's exactly what we're doing at the CBI, looking ahead to the future. And in May, our outstanding new Director General, under his leadership, Tony Danker's leadership, he just completed a year, by the way, in his post, we published our economic strategy for the next decade called Seize the Moment, the title of our conference. A blueprint of how we can secure £700 billion worth of opportunities for the UK economy by 2030. It has 6 pillars: decarbonising our economy, putting innovation and future technology front and centre, reinvigorating our global trade, building thriving regions and nations, adapting to a changing workforce, more dynamic, more skilled, more inclusive than before, and building a healthier nation. The CBI is perfectly placed to not only be the voice of business throughout the whole UK, but to lead the way for our country. And there is a perception, by the way, that the CBI only speaks for big business. Of course we do, but we also speak for 190,000 businesses, including 200 trade associations, from the National Farmers Union to the Law Society, covering every sector in the economy and every part of the United Kingdom. We're present in every region of the country. And the CBI is global in its outlook, and our offices in Delhi and in Washington, in Brussels, in Beijing. So if we want to continue to be the 6th largest economy in the world, if we want a high-wage economy, we need to have a high-skilled economy, a high-productivity economy, and a high-investment economy. And when it comes to skills, I've spoken about our best universities, best of the best universities, and it's so reassuring that we have Nadeem Zahawi as our new Secretary of State for Education. At a recent CBI leaders' dinner, Nadeem Zahawi said that the Education Department is an economics department. Wow, music to our ears. At the CBI, we've calculated that business will need to invest £130 billion over the next 10 years in reskilling. We've highlighted that 9 in 10 people will have to retrain or reskill by 2030. We have an apprenticeship levy in this country that needs to be far more flexible. It needs reform. We have good initiatives from the government, like the Kickstart scheme. The CBI asked for that to be extended, and the government has extended it. They've listened. The government has expanded skills boot camps. They've introduced a lifelong loan entitlement, which is great news. I was a member of the Centenary Adult Education Commission, which reported in 2019, November, before the pandemic, and this is a recommendation that we made, developing individual learner accounts. The government has listened. But wait for this, the lifelong learning account, these loans, they don't start on 2025. What are we waiting for? Let's start them now. And building on this, business must also have access to the labour force that it needs. At the CBI, we've recommended that the government should revamp the Migration Advisory Committee by giving it similar powers to the Low Pay Commission, widely acknowledged as one of the most successful public policy interventions in decades. Why? Independence. We would add economists and businesses to the MAC's membership, along with academics, to be able to flex and independently activate the shortage occupation list on a periodic basis. That's what we need. So the essential components to keep the UK competitive include action to increase business investment, keep taxes smart, tackle labour and skill shortages. And there's another element too, and that's boosting our global trade. The UK has always been a great trading nation. And this year we published for the first time ever an integrated review for our country, incorporating our security, our defence, our development and our foreign policy strategy all in one. Our vision for the UK's role in the world stage, with trade at its core. And for nearly 4 decades, our trade deals were negotiated by the European Union. And over the last 5 years, the UK's Department for International Trade did an incredible job. We've signed trade agreements with 60 non-EU countries and one with the EU, a remarkable achievement which many thought would be impossible. On top of this, I'm proud to say that the CBI has played a major role in helping with new trade agreements, such as the UK-Australia FTA. This is a truly comprehensive agreement, including goods and services, IP, innovation, SMEs, digital, mobility, including mobility for young people. This was followed by the FTA with New Zealand, and an enhanced trade partnership has been announced with India, targeting to double our bilateral trade by 2030. Formal negotiations of the UK-India FTA are starting imminently, and the CBI is playing a major role in that. So the opportunity for the UK globally are huge. Global Britain is huge. It's a huge possibility. So put this into context. Let me give you another statistics. Whole of the Commonwealth, 54 countries, make up less than 10% of the UK's exports. The USA is our largest single trading partner for exports by far, 21%, and there's no prospect of an FTA in the future there. Yet let us not forget, we may have left the European Union, but it is still over 40% of the UK's trade and our biggest and closest trading partner. So in the EU, individual countries are our largest partners. For example, Germany and Holland and many EU countries want even closer bilateral ties with the UK post-Brexit. These are some of our biggest bilateral trading partners. And this was very clearly articulated by the hugely impressive Greek Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, in our session yesterday where I interviewed him for half an hour. If you get a chance, watch it. It was excellent. Here the objective is simple. Post-Brexit, we need to normalize trading relations with the EU. And the politicization of trade, end it. Let's work together to advance common interests. And let me speak plainly. Our new relationship with the EU didn't begin smoothly. Red tape still hampers firms today. But here again we can illustrate the gains collaboration can bring by working through the Business Brexit Task Force, a body called for by the CBI and which still exists today, which we sit on. We put industry in the room with government decision makers to get things done. There have been weeks of intensive discussions between the UK and EU negotiators on the trickiest of all topics, the Northern Ireland Protocol. On this topic, I speak for business, not only in Great Britain, not only in Northern Ireland, for those around the world willing both parties to agree a compromise, allowing us to look forward, not look back. And there is one overarching thing we must do to unlock potential of a truly global Britain. We must harness the power of these competitive strengths on the international stage. We must back more UK firms of every size, sector and region to go global and export. We already know exporting companies that export are more productive, more innovative. We saw this in the pandemic. They're more resilient against economic shocks. And government has already laid the foundations for this with its new export strategy launched last week, an important step to help business connect to international markets and navigate our new relationship with the EU. Now government must get the delivery of that strategy right, putting small businesses at the heart of the recovery and inspiring exports to build long-term resilience. Industry are already leading with the new Trade and Services Council announcing the export strategy to amplify the success of the UK's world-beating services industries. At the CBI, we will also support the UK's export strength by bringing together businesses in our regional mentoring program. And we're launching a global trade hub as a single source of online export advice and insight. You can get involved in this crucial project by joining our International Trade Advisory Group or one of our working groups, and by nominating your business to be an export superstar. An export superstar is one that exports more than 10 products to more than 10 markets. Only 14% of UK businesses who export are export superstars. In Germany, that is 40%. This has to change. We also need the UK to continue to be a magnet for inward investment. We already have so many great strengths. We have the globally respected London Stock Exchange. Our legal services are the best in the world. Our judges and courts are the most respected in the world. There are our world-leading financial services and insurance sector. This year, Ron Khalifa's review also highlighted the huge potential and strength of our fintech sector. And since the financial crisis, our regulatory system is so much more agile, so much more innovative, so much more robust. We've also had my colleague Lord Hill's important listings review to bolster our advantage and encourage investment. But there is so much more that we can do to unlock the deep pools of capital we know are out there. From developing new models to encouraging more businesses to use our public markets to grow, we must enable more investment in R&D to support the decarbonisation drive. And looking to the future, all our economic regulators should strive for dynamism by prioritising investment, innovation and agility as part of their core remits. So throughout what I've said, I hope you will see not just the challenges, but the huge opportunities and amazing capabilities of our country. We've always punched above our weight. We've always been world-leading, innovative, and super creative. Britain is a global brand that is trusted. Last year, one of my Harvard Business School professors, Frances Fry, gave us a lecture on trust. She described trust as a triangle of authenticity, capability, and empathy. The UK has all three in abundance. We are trusted around the world. We must always be collaborative. We must be competitive. The motto of my business is to aspire and achieve against all odds with integrity. And that is what we have got to do as a country looking ahead to the future. But most importantly, we will do this by not just being the best in the world, but the best for the world. Thank you.